I knew something was wrong the moment I saw the chairs. There were 30 of them. I counted twice. White folding chairs lined up in neat rows inside the small independent bookstore I had chosen for my first book launch. I had imagined them filled with familiar faces, colleagues who had watched me write during lunch breaks, friends who had read early drafts, people who once told me, when you publish, we'll be there but at 6:57 p.m., 3 minutes before I was supposed to begin, only 4 chairs were occupied. 2 were taken by strangers browsing the shelves, one by the bookstore owner and one by my younger cousin, who had rushed straight from her college class and was still wearing her backpack. I stood behind the podium, smoothing my palms against my dress, telling myself not to panic. It's fine, I whispered. Traffic, last-minute delays, they'll come. I had sent reminders. I had designed the invitations myself, soft cream backgrounds with gold lettering. I had even personally handed printed copies to my office team. I remember how they smiled. Of course we'll be there. Wouldn't miss it. You're finally an author. I believed them. I always believe people. That has always been my quiet flaw. The bookstore smelled like paper and coffee. Fairy lights were strung along the shelves. My book, Between Quiet Things, was stacked in a small pyramid near the front, the cover reflecting the warm light. I had spent 2 years writing it. 2 years of early mornings, late nights, and weekends sacrificed. 2 years of trusting that the people around me meant it when they said they were proud. At 7:02 p.m., the door chimed. I turned, hopeful. It was just another customer. I checked my phone. No messages from my office group chat. No running late. No parking is a nightmare. Nothing. Instead, I saw something else. On social media, a bright photo flashed at the top of my feed. Balloons, champagne glasses, gold confetti, and there in the center was Daniel, my coworker. Tonight was his promotion party. Across town, I hadn't known it was scheduled for the same evening. My stomach tightened. I scrolled. Photo after photo appeared. My entire team stood behind him, smiling wide. Even the ones who had hugged me in the break room earlier that week. Even the one who said, "Send me the address again. I don't want to get lost." They weren't lost. They were just somewhere else. My cousin squeezed my hand gently. "You okay?" I smiled automatically, of course. The bookstore owner cleared her throat kindly. "Whenever you're ready," I stepped up to the microphone. The sound of my own breathing felt louder than the room. "Hi," I began softly. "Thank you for coming tonight." My voice didn't shake. I was proud of that. I spoke about the book. About how it began as journal entries after my father's business failed and our family had to downsize our home. About how silence can hold both grief and growth. About learning that not everyone who claps for you privately will stand beside you publicly. I hadn't meant that last sentence to sound personal, but it did. Halfway through my reading, my phone vibrated in my hand. Once, then again, I almost ignored it, but something made me glance down, a message from my mother. "I heard Daniel's party is huge. Everyone important from your company is there. Maybe it's good networking for them, you understand." My chest went cold. She hadn't asked how my launch was going. She hadn't asked if people showed up. She had framed their absence as strategic. Practical, logical. My mother has always loved practicality. She believes in aligning with success. She believes in being where the spotlight is brightest. When my father's business struggled years ago, I watched relatives quietly distance themselves. Invitations slowed, calls became shorter. I learned early that support often depends on status. And suddenly, standing in front of those nearly empty chairs, I felt that same quiet lesson again. I finished reading the passage. Applause, gentle but sincere, filled the small room, 4 pairs of hands. It should have felt humiliating. Instead, it felt clarifying. After the reading, the bookstore owner hugged me warmly. "You spoke beautifully. A stranger bought 2 copies. My cousin took photos of me signing my first book. I kept smiling, but something inside me had shifted, not shattered, shifted. I checked social media one more time before leaving. There was a new photo now, Daniel raising a glass, my team around him. The caption read, "Supporting greatness." I stared at the word. Greatness for a moment. I wondered if maybe I had misjudged everything. Maybe my dream was smaller. Maybe writing wasn't impressive enough. Maybe I was naive to expect loyalty when ambition was involved. Or maybe I was simply learning who shows up when there's no spotlight. The bookstore lights dimmed as we prepared to leave. I looked back at the empty chairs. They didn't feel like rejection anymore. They felt like information. And information, I was beginning to understand, is a gift, even when it hurts. The office smelled like vanilla cake the next morning. Someone had left half of it in the break room fridge, wrapped loosely in foil. Gold frosting smudged the edges of the box. A plastic knife sat beside it, still sticky. I stood there longer than I needed to. The evidence was casual. Careless, like last night hadn't meant anything. "Hey," Marissa's voice chimed behind me. "Oh my gosh, your launch was yesterday, right? How did it go?" Her tone was light. Curious, polite, I turned slowly, offering the same soft smile I always did. "It went well, thank you." She nodded, already pouring coffee. "That's good. Daniel's thing ran super late. You know how these corporate celebrations are. Corporate celebrations." I hadn't known his promotion was finalized until 3 days ago. I hadn't known the party was happening at all until I saw it on my phone mid-sentence, mid-heartbeat, mid-hope. "Yeah," I said gently. "I saw the photos." There was a pause, not guilt, just calculation. "Well." She shrugged lightly. "You know how important visibility is. Management was there. It's just strategic. Strategic." The same word my mother had implied the night before. I nodded as if that made sense, because part of me understood it. Daniel had always been ambitious, charming in meetings, quick to volunteer for presentations. He knew how to speak in numbers and projections, the language executives loved. I spoke in metaphors, in emotions, in slow truths. There's no KPI for that. Back at my desk, a few colleagues waved casually. "Hey, author," one of them joked. I smiled again, but something inside me had grown very still. Around 11 a.m., Daniel walked in. He was glowing in the way people do after applause, crisp navy suit, confident posture, the kind of energy that fills space without asking permission. He stopped by my desk. "Hey," he said warmly, "I meant to text you last night. Things got crazy." I looked up at him. "Congratulations," I replied. "Thanks." He hesitated. "I heard your launch was the same night. Bad timing, huh? Bad timing." "Like weather, like coincidence, not choice, it happens," I said calmly. He shifted slightly. "You should have come by after. It was packed. Great networking opportunity." I held his gaze. "I had somewhere else to be." He nodded, not quite meeting my eyes anymore. "Right, of course." He walked away. And I realized something quiet but sharp. None of them believed my event and his were equal. Not really. Mine was personal, creative, uncertain. His was corporate, loud, rewarded. In the afternoon, my phone buzzed again. A message from my mother. "I saw the turnout in the photos. It looked small. Are you sure you're focusing on the right things?" I stared at the screen. "No, I'm proud of you. No, you must have been nervous. No, I wish I could have been there. Just concern about optics." Growing up, my mother measured success in rooms filled with people. Large weddings, big houses, loud celebrations. She believed being seen was proof of worth. When my father's business collapsed, she didn't cry about the loss of income. She cried about the loss of invitations. I typed back slowly. It was intimate. It felt right. She responded almost immediately. "Daniel's promotion will open doors. Align yourself wisely." Align yourself wisely. The words settled heavy in my chest. For years I had been the agreeable one, the gentle one, the one who understood. I supported my colleagues' milestones. I edited Daniel's presentation slides once when he was overwhelmed. I covered shifts without complaint. I believed support was mutual, but support I was beginning to see was often transactional, and I had never learned to calculate. At 4 p.m., I passed by a group gathered near Daniel's desk. They were laughing about the party. The champagne tower was insane. Did you see the VP speech? Best turnout we've had all year. No one mentioned my book, not out of cruelty, out of indifference. And indifference, I realized, can wound more quietly than insult. I returned to my desk and opened my laptop. There were 3 emails from readers, strangers they had attended last night. One wrote, "Your reading made me call my sister and apologize." Another, "I felt seen for the first time in months." I read those messages twice. Then 3 times. The room around me felt less loud. Across town, there had been music, lights, and a crowd. In that small bookstore, there had been something else, connection, and yet I couldn't deny the ache. Because it wasn't just about attendance. It was about promises. It was about realizing that the people who said, "We're a team," only meant it when the spotlight was profitable. As I packed my bag that evening, Daniel called out, "Drinks Friday to celebrate again. You coming?" I paused. The old version of me would have said yes automatically, the one who didn't want to seem distant, the one who feared being excluded. But instead, I smiled soft, calm. "I have plans." He looked surprised. I walked toward the elevator. Not angry, not dramatic, just aware. Across town, they had chosen where they believed success lived. And for the first time, I stopped trying to convince anyone that mine counted too. Some truths don't arrive with confrontation. They arrive with clarity, and clarity, I was learning, changes you quietly. At 7:42 p.m., my phone buzzed again. I remember the time because I was sitting at my kitchen table, still in my work clothes, staring at the wall like it might answer a question I didn't know how to ask. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. My book sat in front of me, one copy open. My own words looking back at me like a mirror I wasn't ready to face. The notification preview showed my mother's name. I let it ring once, twice, then I opened it. Daniel's mother called me today. My breath caught. I hadn't known our families spoke. Then again, my mother believes in maintaining valuable connections. She had met Daniel once at a company dinner last year and later described his family as well-positioned. Another message followed immediately. She mentioned there may be leadership restructuring soon. If Daniel rises higher, he could influence hiring decisions. You should think long-term. I felt something inside me settle into place. Not shock, recognition. Suddenly, pieces from the past year rearranged themselves in my mind. The subtle questions my mother had asked about Daniel's projects. The way she encouraged me to collaborate with him more closely. The afternoon she said, "Sometimes relationships matter more than talent." I had thought she meant mentorship, support, professional growth, but now I understood something else. Alignment, positioning, proximity to power. And I realized that last night hadn't just been about my co-workers choosing a louder event. It had been about strategy. Even my own mother had seen my book launch as optional because it didn't raise my status. I set my phone down slowly. A memory surfaced. 3 years ago, when I first told my parents I was writing a book, my mother had smiled politely. "That's sweet," she said, "but make sure it doesn't distract from your real career." My father had been quieter. He had simply nodded. Neither of them had asked what it was about. I had written anyway, not for applause, not for promotion, but because there were things inside me that needed language. At 7:46 p.m., another message arrived. "Daniel's family is hosting a small dinner next month. They might invite you. It would be wise to attend. wise. Everything was about wisdom in the practical sense, but no one asked if I was hurt. No one asked how it felt to stand in front of empty chairs. I typed back slowly. Why does it matter so much? There was a pause, then. Because you need security. Your writing is uncertain. You can't build your future on feelings. I stared at that sentence for a long time. You can't build your future on feelings, but my entire book was built on feelings. On grief, on resilience, on silent strength, and suddenly I understood something painful but freeing. My mother had never disrespected me loudly. She had simply never believed in the things that couldn't be measured, which meant she would always gravitate toward the brightest room, and I would always choose the quiet one. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't her. It was an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. "Hello," a warm, older woman's voice replied. "Hi, is this the author of Between Quiet Things?" "Yes," I said cautiously. "I attended your reading yesterday," she continued. "I didn't get a chance to speak much. I just wanted to tell you, I bought 3 more copies today. I'm sending them to my daughters." My throat tightened. "Oh," I whispered, "thank you." She paused gently. You know small rooms are not small when the words matter. Tears blurred my vision. We spoke for only a few minutes. She told me my chapter about silent expectations reminded her of her own marriage. She said she wished someone had written those words when she was younger. After I hung up, the apartment felt different. Still quiet, but no longer empty at 8:03 p.m. My mother called. I let it ring. For the first time in my life, I didn't answer immediately. Not out of anger, but because I needed to hear my own thoughts first. I looked around my small kitchen. The chipped mug, the stack of draft notebooks, the handwritten edits in the margins of my manuscript. Nothing about this life was glamorous, but it was honest, and honesty, I realized, doesn't compete. It stands. My phone stopped ringing. A message appeared. "Call me when you've calmed down. I'm only thinking of your future." I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop and reread the emails from readers, strangers who had nothing to gain from supporting me. Strangers who showed up without calculation, and slowly, something shifted inside me. I had spent years trying to be agreeable enough, talented enough, supportive enough, hoping that loyalty would naturally return. But loyalty that depends on status isn't loyalty. It's positioning. At 8:17 p.m., I turned my phone face down. Not dramatically, just deliberately, for the first time, I stopped trying to prove that my quiet mattered. I didn't need to argue. I didn't need to confront. I simply needed to observe, because when people reveal what they value, believe them. And at 7:42 p.m., with one message, I finally did. 2 weeks later, I stopped waiting for apologies. That was the first real change, not confrontation, not distance, just the quiet decision to stop expecting something that was never offered. At the office, nothing dramatic happened. Daniel continued stepping into his new role. Meetings grew larger. His calendar filled with leadership lunches. My colleagues adjusted themselves around him like furniture being rearranged in a brighter room. And I continued doing my work, but something in me had shifted from soft expectation to steady observation. When Daniel asked for help revising a client presentation one afternoon, the kind of help I used to give automatically, I paused. "I can look at it tomorrow," I said calmly, after I finish my own deadline. There was no edge in my voice. Just clarity. He blinked, slightly surprised. "Oh, sure." I did review it the next day, briefly, professionally, without staying late. It felt unfamiliar at first, this gentle boundary, but not wrong. At home, my mother continued sending articles about career strategy and invitations to events she believed were beneficial. I no longer argued. I no longer defended my writing. I simply responded with neutral politeness. Thank you. I'll think about it. I have other plans, and slowly the urgency in her messages softened. Not because she changed, but because I stopped trying to convince her. One Sunday evening, she called again. I heard your book sold out its first small print, she said. There was something different in her tone. Not pride, not exactly. Curiosity, yes, I replied. The bookstore ordered more. A pause, that's good. Another pause. You know, she added carefully, Daniel's mother mentioned your name at dinner last week. She said she didn't realize you had published. I smiled faintly. Now she does. Silence lingered between us. For once, I didn't rush to fill it. My mother cleared her throat. Are you coming to the family dinner next Friday? I thought about it. In the past, I would have rearranged my schedule instantly, to appear agreeable, to avoid disappointment, but I checked my calendar. I'm hosting a small reader discussion that night. I said gently. So I won't make it. There was no accusation in my voice, no rebellion, just truth. Oh, she said, surprised. Well, that's important too, I suppose. Important too. It wasn't full validation, but it was the first time she hadn't dismissed it entirely. That night, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea and reread a passage from my own book. It was about learning that love without respect eventually feels like hunger. I used to feel hungry around people, hungry for recognition, hungry for reassurance, hungry for visible loyalty. Now I felt steady. The reader discussion the following Friday was held in the same bookstore where my launch had taken place. This time every chair was filled, not with co-workers, not with strategic connections, but with people who had read the book and brought friends. Some had highlighted pages, some had written questions in the margins. When I began speaking, I didn't scan the room for who was missing. I looked at who was present. Afterward, as I signed copies, the bookstore owner leaned toward me. You know. She said warmly, the first launch felt small, but sometimes the beginning tells you exactly who your real audience is. I nodded. Yes, it had. Later that night, as I walked to my car, my phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. Heard your book is gaining traction. Congrats. I stared at it for a moment, then typed back, thank you. No bitterness, no reopening doors, just acknowledgement. A few minutes later, another message arrived, this time from my mother. I'm proud of you. The words were simple. They didn't erase the past. They didn't rewrite that empty room. But they were offered without strategy, and for now, that was enough. I sat in my car for a moment before starting the engine. The night air was cool, the city lights soft and distant. Across town, there would always be brighter parties, louder celebrations, rooms where success was measured by applause and photographs. But I had learned something priceless in that nearly empty bookstore. Not everyone who smiles at you will stand beside you. Not every absence is betrayal. Sometimes it is information. And you do not have to beg to be valued. You simply have to notice who shows up. I no longer beg for crowded rooms. I no longer explain why my quiet matters. I no longer chase alignment with people who calculate worth in visibility. I build slowly. I choose carefully. And I stand where I am respected even if the room is small, because real support doesn't compete. It commits, and peace, I have discovered, arrives the moment you stop trying to earn what should be freely given.